Good evening and welcome to Ridgecrest Talk, right here on your own local TV station. I'm your host tonight, Al Huey, along with
Robert Eierman.
And we are honored and privileged to have as our guest tonight the mayor of Ridgecrest, Mr. Daniel Clark. And we're going to be talking about some issues that have come up before the council in the last couple months, I would say.
Correct.
The most recent one last night had to deal with the Justin O'Neill sole source contract that's been before the council, maybe 4 times?
Yes.
And it finally got a vote on it last night. The vote was 1 abstention, 1 no vote, and 3 ayes. So the contract is going to move forward with Mr. Justin O'Neill doing basically community promotion of events and different things that go on in the city. But we want to thank the mayor for being with us tonight.
My pleasure, gentlemen.
Thanks for being here. And talk to us a little bit about the Justin O'Neill contract and the issues that have surrounded that over the last several months.
Well, we've been dealing with this issue for 4 months. And originally, one of my colleagues came up with this idea of sole sourcing the contract. And I think it was in due part to Justin's excellent work on the 50th and the marketing of the city. He had a segment of our 50th celebration, our incorporation birthday, if you will, and he did the street fair, and it was an excellent affair, and he did a lot of social media work. And one of my colleagues thought that it was the need was strong enough within the city that we should take a look at sole source contracting this gentleman's for his professionalism. And so that put us on track to take a look at a sole source contract. So if we had to get legal clarification of what a sole source contract, what that entailed. And there were 2 sets of criteria, of which our legal staff said the Justin O'Neill met. Mm-hmm. And so from there, we have dealt with this issue, like you say, for 4 months. And I pulled that contract. We had a contract 5 different times because I was not comfortable with the contract. And in between the pulling of the contracts, we had an ad hoc committee of which Councilmember Acton and myself served on, and I actually believe you were at one of the meetings. And we tried to iron out what a fair, equitable contract would look like for a sole source with the abilities of Justin O'Neill. And so last night, we finally came to an agreement. I looked at the contract and I felt there was a segment in there I wanted in the contract, and essentially I wanted it to say that the city manager would review for appropriateness and for legality the direction that council would give a contractor. And until I saw that, I wouldn't vote for it, because I felt like we were setting this young man up to fail. Because there's sometimes some pretty strong egos on council, and everyone wants this young man to do certain tasks, and I wanted him to be able to filter that direction from all 5 council members in a way that was appropriate, so he could do the best job, select the ones that he could accomplish, send out responses to the council that he had gotten his direction from. And if there was something illegal, we get council members at times that come in that, they're new and they don't understand, or they don't understand the contract, might give Justin direction that didn't fit within the scope of work. And so when I finally saw that on there, and that was just last night, was the first time I could support the direction that the council was going to sole source contract.
But before we had the sole source with Justin, didn't the city pursue regular bidding to see if there might be somebody out there who'd be willing to do this, not necessarily local?
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Ella. We, about 6 months ago, and I'm shooting from the hip here from a little bit, so don't hold me too tight to this. About 6, 7 months ago, we looked at a marketing specialist. And our HR department put out the standard marketing professional service contract with a 40-hour-a-week expectation and benefits in the whole 9 yards. And we had a number of applicants. I'm going to say we had, I wasn't on the interviewing committee, but I think there were 5.
Including Justin, right?
I believe so. I wasn't on there, but I think he was a part of that.
Right.
And we were looking at, you know, a professional marketer, people that do what we sole sourced, you know, get $80,000, $90,000 a year. Well, that didn't fit into our budget at all. And because of that, when we got the information from the interviewing committee, and we didn't feel comfortable with what we saw, and we certainly didn't feel, looking at our budget, which at the time we had inherited a pretty austere budget, and it's still austere, we decided we couldn't make that happen. And so therefore we, I said, you know, we all said as a council, we can't afford this. This isn't what we wanted. We wanted a part-time, you know, special services contract that we could evaluate as it kind of evolved. And then we had to figure out how we were going to work that contract, because we never had one before. So what would that media look like, media person look like? How would he take direction? And so it's who was that young man that came up at the dais and asked me, why does this take 4 months or 5 months to do? And
don't know. It was someone who worked for Justin, however.
yeah,
let me just stop you there. I wanted to ask you about a point that you just made, that you wanted something in the contract where Dennis Spear would look things over. And I thought that what was said is that if that happened, then he would become an employee. So I'm confused.
That is correct. Yeah, if our city manager gives direction, then we have problems. That's not. He gives the contract. In this case, Justin O'Neill takes direct direction from the council. All I'm asking and all I wanted from the city manager, and it was in our contract, and that's why I could support it, was that we would make sure that the direction was appropriate within the contract and legal.
Within scope. So yeah, he's not giving direction. He's
none whatsoever.
Sure
all he's going to do is make sure that new council members.
Okay, I hate to cut this off, but we're getting ready to go to break, unfortunately. We hope you stay with us. We'll be back right after this break. Thanks. Welcome back to Ridgecrest Talk. Again, I'm your host, Al Huey, along with
Robert Eierman.
And we're talking with the mayor, Mr. Daniel Clark. We were talking in the first segment there about the sole source contract with Justin O'Neill. And let's just wrap it up real quick before we move on to another subject. So they voted to buy in on the sole source contract last night. When I noticed there were some changes that the city attorney wanted to make. When will Mr. O'Neill actually begin doing any work for the city?
I don't know the answer to that.
Okay.
Yeah, that'll be when the lawyers finally okay the contract with the amendments in it,
right.
Alterations in it. Then Mr. Spear they'll sit down with Mr. Spear, and I'm sure that contract will be implemented. But I don't know. I would guess, not being the city manager, in 2 weeks. I would think in 2 weeks we could wrap that up, sit down, sign the contract, and Justin should be good to go.
Okay.
I'm guessing, but I think so.
On another subject line, Robert, why don't you talk about our next subject we're going to talk about here with the mayor?
Sure. 2 years ago, a little over that, the city of Ridgecrest, voted term limits in for the mayoral position and for the council position. In fact, that's when an elected mayor was brought to fruition. You, of course, being the first elected mayor. And I noticed that, you know, you wrote an article in the paper. There was a discussion also at city council meeting relative to term limits, and I was just curious as to why those things occurred.
Why we voted for term limits?
No, not why we voted for term limits. Why you were bringing the issue back up again.
Well,
what,
it's
what
better-
is it about it that you felt so compelled to?
Yeah. Well, I served on council for 6 years, and then I retired as a teacher and as a council member and traveled for 3 years. In that first 6 years, what I found was we need, I think, as a council, continuity. We need to be able to trust each other. We need to be able to work together and communicate. And I think for this community, and for probably any community faced with this issue, if you have a mayor that serves 4 years just like the council, I think you add to the ability of a council to work as a unit. That is to say, the delineation of duties of interest on our council, for example. Lori does more of the environmental and the water issues. Steve does more of the infrastructure street side. And you look at all the different components that make an effective council. And when you're moving the mayor, who runs the meeting and sets the agenda at some level, although council can do it as well, I think if you change that leadership, that running of a meeting, it breaks the continuity. I think, and I respect the decision of the public. I just think we needed a discussion, and I still think we need to continue that discussion to take a look at the effectiveness of a council when you change the mayor every 2 years. So in my case, I'm only going to serve 2 years and then I'm leaving. But so they're going to have a new mayor. What will that mayor look like? How will that continuity affect the council that's presently here? And I think those are issues that I think every community wants an effective, comprehensive, cohesive council. And if you don't have that, and we've not had that in the past. We've had times when we had factionated councils and they couldn't get anything accomplished. I think as a community, taking a look at that term limit and adjusting it to the same as a council, it would benefit our community.
So you're primarily talking about the term for the mayor's office being 4 years instead of 2
Correct.
years. But I would make the point that right now our council changes faces, or could change faces, every 2 years.
Could.
Because we have every 2
the
years.
council as a
because
whole.
because we're staggered.
Yeah.
We elect 2 each time.
Correct. 2 and then 3 and then 2 and then 3.
Well, yeah, but that's how it used to be. But now, of course, we elect 2 each every 2 years. 2 council members.
Correct. No,
And then of
with the
course, we
elected
have the mayor.
Right.
And I would also say that in the past, we would have a new mayor many times every year, because the council would, would elect the mayor. When you were on council before, sometimes they served for 2 years, but in general, the quote appointment election, whatever you want to call it, was for only 1 year.
Correct.
So
Let me touch on what you've thrown out here as a discussion point. One,
Sure.
Incumbents, if they want to stay on council, I mean, we have sitting council members, and 16, 15.
Yes.
We've got, so the term limits for council are 8 years now. I mean,
Yes,
into
correct.
2 4-year terms. I still think that a 4-year mirrored term for a mayor and a council would make us more effective. When you brought up back years ago when we used to elect a mayor from council, we did that, but we were all sitting on council. We knew each other. We trusted each other. We meshed well. Because of the Brown Act, let's say I'm an infrastructure guy and Steve Morgan, Councilmember Morgan's an infrastructure guy, and then we have another new council member who wants to be. You have to kind of be careful about that when you're talking to staff, when you're working within the community. So I think there's I guess I want to call it a cohesion that would benefit this community if we had a 4-year term. And I'm not interested in that. So I have
you're certainly not.
no
I mean,
agenda
you're
in
talking
this.
about
Yeah.
what you.
I just love the
honestly
community, and
believe.
I think we need to have that discussion again, not at the council level, but I think throughout the community. And if the community decides they want to stay with a 2-year mayor, well, we have to respect that. But I would like to see them consider mirroring a 4-year term with a council as well. I think we'd be far more effective.
You had also brought up about, in this discussion, early on, I thought, the possibility of a paid mayor.
Mm-hmm.
What was your reason for that?
Well, we've talked about that. Actually, we've had a number of council members brought it up. If you wanted to talk about it, I don't know that I support that one way or the other. I mean, it's a discussion item. What would it look like if we had a full-time mayor or even a part-time mayor? I'm moving to Flagstaff, and Jim Neighbors is the mayor there, and they pay him.
Jim Neighbors is the mayor?
Yes.
Not the Jim Neighbors.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And he's the mayor there, and I met him, and I talked to him, and they pay him for 20 hours a week. And nice guy, real nice guy, lawyer, worked within the city. And his comments to me were, I said, what are the problems that you face? And he says, you know, Dan, the biggest problem for me is getting my colleagues to be prepared, research the area, working with legal stuff.
I'm sorry, we've
Okay.
run out of time. You're watching Ridgecrest Talk. Please join us after the Welcome back to Ridgecrest Talk. We're talking this evening with Mayor Dan Clark, and we've been talking about his view on term limits. So,
yeah. And just to wrap up this topic, I just encourage our community to have a safe place to have this kind of discussion about term limits, about a full part-time mayor, even about charter cities and whether we want to be general law or start. I think those conversations are going to move us forward, and I think we as a community need to have a safe place to do that, so we don't think that someone has an agenda, but they think that this discussion will benefit the community and our heading towards whichever goal we want to achieve in terms of that. So that'd be my suggestion to the community. Have the discussion, debate it, talk about it, and then make a decision.
So we need maybe a town hall meeting or something like
You
that.
bet, you bet.
yeah,
That's
that'd
a
be
great
good-
idea.
That's
It's a great idea.
Yeah.
All right, moving on to our next segment with the mayor. Also was brought up here a while back at a council meeting was looking at trying to recover some unpaid trash and recycling bills back when we had the whole trash
Mandatory trash.
fiasco.
Yes.
And let it be known that there's two DTOM yellow shirters
Yeah.
sitting here talking about this, but
I'm surrounded.
it's behind us. But I'm just wondering what your idea of pursuing that. And last I recall, council sent it off to staff to look at trying to find someone who would, a business that would be willing to come in and see about recouping those unpaid bills. What's the status? Have you heard anything from the staff on that?
Well, the cart in front of the horse just a little bit. We're not there yet.
Oh, okay.
But it's $722 million.
$1,000.
$722,000.
Okay,
Thank
I was
you,
gonna
sir.
say, wow, I'm getting in on
Boy,
this.
I'll tell you. And I did some research on this because that's a lot of money. I mean,
Oh, sure.
$750,000, a lot of money. So I thought, well, I need to research this. Even though I wasn't a part of it, I wanted to know what had happened because I was traveling at the time. And I found out there's 3 databases. There's the database of Ben's and their billing system that they turned over to the city. There's a database that Doreen, Virginia, and Ricka took, and they were complaints. You put my trash out there, I had an empty apartment, on and on it goes. And then there's a database of delinquent bills. And so for that 9 months, we got about 10,000 homes. We have 30,000 pieces of information we have to collate into some kind of reasonable approach to this problem. And then we have to factor in the emotional and compassion side of things, because when we move that bill from, what was it, $23 a month to $64 a month, economically it's a huge strain on the disadvantaged, the poor, and
you're talking only the
seniors.
residential side. The business side
Oh,
is
yeah.
much
Yeah.
worse.
So, I mean, we're talking about a real hot button issue, number one, and two, how do you do it competently? Do you create an ombudsman, if you will, to look at the complaints, the registered complaints, and forgive those bills? Do you go out and get a collection agency and try to build some compassion into that approach, or do you just write off $750,000?
And during that time period, I don't remember exactly when, maybe Robert does, the city offered forms for people to fill out to drop out of the mandatory.
Right, to opt out.
Yeah.
I think they called it opt out.
So
I
they
don't
have,
I don't remember when that came in the time frame. I
Right.
just don't. But pretty much all the unpaid bills ended around the June time frame of 2010.
yeah, I don't have those dates because
Because we
actually,
started in September of '09.
yeah, it became so convoluted trying to figure out these three databases and how we would put them together that I said, let's just put this on the back burner.
Okay.
And just look at this issue. Is there any fair and equitable way to collect past bills? I might be one of them. I was traveling at the time. I came home. I got a bill. I went to Ben's. They didn't do it. They didn't collect it anymore. Went to the city. They didn't collect it. It was right in that transition period.
Oh,
went back to
okay.
Ben's. They wouldn't take my money. And so finally they said, Jan, just hold off. Well, I hold it off. I never paid. I would be happy to pay my delinquent bill. I owe it for the trash services I received. How many?
What services?
How many?
You were gone.
Well, but I still had the trash service. I mean, even though I wasn't there, I had to pay for that trash. So they didn't have at the time, or at least I wasn't aware of a vacation package where I could have
Oh, okay.
suspended it. I had to pay that bill. So I had a trash service. It was like electricity and water. I mean, you know, you got your sprinkler system
Yeah, but you
going.
were using electricity and water. You
Well,
weren't using the services.
Maybe not very much electricity. We were on travel, but nonetheless, your
So,
point well taken. Yeah.
Again, I'll bring up what I went through anyway. I didn't participate. They dropped off a trash can, and but I never got a recycling can. And I actually never even pulled the trash can up out of the gutter where they had left it. But yet I continued to get billed.
Yeah, yeah,
So-
exactly. How many are there like that? There was just such a mess that how do you wade through that equitably? I don't know if there's a solution to that. We may
And
have
doesn't
to.
the city consider in the Benz settlement that finally occurred, the city received, I believe it was like around $1 million?
Something like
Yeah,
that.
Yeah.
actually a little more than that. But our legal
The net
fees to
cover-
pursue that ate up most of that. This has been a real negative cash flow for the city. And just as a mayor, I feel I had a responsibility to at least look at, is there
Sure.
a fair and equitable way to recoup
Mm-hmm.
that money? I'm only going to be in the mayor's seat for another 3 or 4 months and I'm gone. So the next mayor is going to have to take a look at this and try to decipher, if you will, can we recoup that funds? Is there a fair and equitable way to do so? I don't know. It's a mess. And
Yeah.
when I looked at all the databases, and one of my staff said, Dan, when they'd come up and they'd be crying because their bill tripled, and I had to deal with that. The emotional element, we haven't even factored into this. It was
Well,
such
I
a
hope
mess.
that the staff does come back with some kind of report so that this can finally be settled
Yeah,
in the
right,
community.
exactly. Because some people out there are now re-worried. You know, they used to be, okay, it's over, and now they've been re-energized to concern themselves about this amount of money that they don't feel they owe, but the city does feel they owe.
Well,
So
I don't
they've
know
been
that
worried.
we have any feeling one way or the other yet. I mean, like I said, we haven't even looked at the data. There's 30,000 pieces of it. And
I'm
you
going to
know,
have to stop it right there.
Okay.
We've run out of time.
We want to thank you for stopping by
oh,
tonight.
my pleasure, gentlemen. I wish you all the luck in the world. in
And
this-
we wish
in this
you all the
deal.
luck
care.
in the world.
You bet.
Maybe have you back on again
You
Thank
bet.
you,
before you
Mayor
leave
Clark.
town.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
I'm Robert Eierman,
I'm Al Huey.
and you've been listening to Ridgecrest Talk right here on KZGN-TV. Join us next week, please.